So they say there's a fine line between collecting and hoarding. I wonder where they would get an idea like that. Hello and welcome to another episode of Stories from Grayskull Unscripted. And today we are going over another faction of the Masters of the Universe franchise, and that would be the Evil Horde. And I'll be going through my collection from the Classics line. For those not in the know, unscripted means, as it says, this is not pre-scripted, this is on-the-fly recollection. So just a bit of context, my Horde collection, the majority of my Classics collection has been in storage, so I'm literally just pulling these out, and I haven't laid my hands on these guys for quite a while. So this is sort of going to be like a reintroduction to the line and, my thoughts on it and everything. And don't worry, a proper Horde video covering the lore and everything will be eventually released in my channel. But for now, this is sort of like a primer, I guess. And don't come here for facts. I'm probably going to get a lot of the facts wrong. So these are just thoughts that come into my head when I've got these figures in my hand. And so with that out of the way, let's get started with who else but the main guy himself, Hordak. So yeah, as the story goes, 1985, the line was around 3 years old, and Mattel figured it was time to refresh with a new baddie, and so they brought in the Evil Horde. And first impressions, what I really liked about the Evil Horde was there was sort of a unifying theme behind the group. So aside from the fact, and you'll see this later in their weaponry, where is Hordak's? Here. So which is the crossbow. So this is Hordak's crossbow. And almost every main member of the Horde had their own variation of this crossbow, as I'll show later on, which I thought was cool. But other than that, I don't know if this is factually stated, but I heard somewhere that the Evil Horde as a team, at least the first few members, the concept was these were supposed to be Eternian versions of classic universal monsters, Dracula, werewolf, and we'll get to them later on. But as it is, the big bad himself, Hordak, is supposed to be Dracula. He's got the whole bat theme. I mean, the Horde symbol is the bat, or whatever Eternian's version of a bat is, but he basically takes the whole thing of the bat, of Dracula, right? He's dark colored black. He's got the whole bat theme pegged down. And yeah, so we all know what happens. Basically, the Horde, when they were first introduced, they were supposed to be the big bad, the next big bad of He-Man. Hordak was sort of like, in most fiction, he's basically the big boss of Skeletor, the original boss of Skeletor, who Skeletor follows. But how can you beat a hooded bad guy with a skull for a head? I mean, I think they did pretty well with Hordak. But that being said, when the Horde were introduced, the cartoon, which was at this point, I think the driving force of the Masters of the Universe franchise, was kind of winding down. And so Filmation had already was already moving on to their next project, which was She-Ra, Mattel and Filmation. And so as such, in the cartoon, the Horde was repurposed as the new bad guy for the He-Man universe into the new bad guy for the She-Ra universe. And as was the style, Filmation was meant for younger audiences. So the look of Hordak and the Horde were softened for the cartoon just like anybody else. But Hordak, I think it's worth mentioning, was radically changed. Post a picture here. So as you can see, he was, amped up in colors to black and blues instead of black and grays. And I mean, and he had this weird snorting voice and whatever, and which was cool and stuff, but I will always prefer the OG. Oh, and one more uniting theme, I guess, that was kind of more portrayed in the cartoons and in later versions was the whole tech. I mean, He-Man was always about tech and magic, but the Horde kind of tipped it over to the tech side. So as such, Hordak in the cartoon was kind of like a magical version of Trapjaw. He could change his limbs, his hands into different weapons. And speaking of which, so yeah, since we're on Hordak, he being a big bad had his variations in the original toy line, and the Classics kind of covered it. So speaking of those interchangeable hands or armaments, so we got this version, which is the Hurricane Hordak. And so his gimmick, aside from the vac metallized chest, was his interchangeable. The other pieces are in storage, but basically I'll post a picture of all the other armaments, but this is removable, and he had all 3 different types of spinning weapons that you could. I mean, he had his. You could use this as a cannon, which was used in the cartoon, but yeah, interchangeable weapons, spinning weapons. So this is Hurricane Hordak, and then the other version that I have is this guy, Buzzsaw Hordak. So the original toy had this gimmick where you could, I guess, I never had it, but you flip open the chest and Buzzsaw would, I don't know if it would spring out or what. I never had the original toy. You can let me know in the comments below. But yeah, so, but in the Classics toy line, they kind of did away with all these action features. So this was basically an opening compartment with Buzzsaw. And he came with a white variant of the crossbow, which was supposed to be the Filmation version, but it's the exact same crossbow but white. And honestly, there's nothing much to say about this guy because unlike the Hurricane version who had the chrome look, a unique look, this was basically the original Hordak. Different paint, but I guess it's good for those who missed the original one. You got the Buzzsaw one to lead your horde. And so yeah, Buzzsaw, Hurricane, and OG Hordak. The next guy in the horde, actually he was the first horde character that I got introduced to as a kid. Is, I guess you could call him the Beast Man of the group, or keeping with the Universal Monsters theme, the werewolf of the group, Grizzlor. So actually grizzly, so he's supposed to be a bear, but you know, furry guy, so furry humanoid. So in case you're wondering, he does look different from the original OG figure, and I'll post a picture here. This is not how he was originally sold. So over here, this one is based on the 2002 Mike Young Productions reboot. Basically, I mean, his whole gimmick was he had real fur, and the execution of the original toy made him look like a puffball, for lack of a better word. And when the Mike Young Productions, and he was like a furry bruiser, right? But when the Four Horsemen, who worked with Mike Young to redesign all these concepts, came across with Grizzlor, so they kind of gave him a sort of animalistic, hunter look, right? He was a hunter, and as such, he had multiple weapons. So this is his. Actually, I just noticed this now. His crossbow is actually just a recolor of Hordak's. Oh, that's disappointing. I thought he had already. Well, I'll post a picture of the one from the Staction. That one was a unique sculpt for his crossbow, but I don't know what the OG one looked like. I'll look for that too. But yeah, so he came with lots of hunting weapons. Like, so he's got a hatchet, a machete, and a long sword. So, and they added all these other details, which basically broke up the whole puffball look. So this head was originally supposed to come packaged with the original release. It was sculpted and designed, but Mattel decided last minute to exclude it. But then years later, they threw us a bone and included it in a 2000X head pack. So that's why we have this now. So yeah, Grizzlor, I don't know, how you see him in your collection, but I just love this version that the Four Horsemen came up with. So the ultimate hunter of the group and the werewolf. So Grizzlor. Next is arguably my favorite member of the group, and that would be Leech. Again, with the whole Universal Monsters, this guy would sort of like be the creature from the Black Lagoon, the aquatic monster. So Leech. And his crossbow, I'm starting to get to feel disappointment in real time. But this also, is it unique? It also seems like just a recolor. No, actually no. The heads are different. Yeah, so okay, unique. And of course, he has his feature. The original toy had suction cups, so he's a leech. So he's supposed to suck energy. So his original toy had suction cups in the feet, the hands, and the mouth. Actually, the mouth had the major suction mechanism. But again, like as was the case with Classics, no features, no special features. So they may look like suckers. Well, actually, I don't know if these actually can attach. They probably don't because the plastic is kind of hard and not. So no, I don't think these guys have any actual sucking capabilities. But yeah, I mean, it worked out well for the head sculpt because, again, I'll show a picture of the original toy. And as you can see, the actual sculpt of the head was broken up by the gimmick. It didn't look natural. So this took a lot to get used to, but I mean, I guess this would be what it would look like if you took out the whole suction gimmick, right? It would have been nice. I don't remember if they included an alternate. I don't think they included an alternate sucking head. I think later versions like the Origins did. But yeah, Leech was always my favorite, mostly because, again, once again, the Four Horsemen. Okay, so the Horde, they did come out in the reboot in 2002, but just in an episode, and they really didn't do much. I'm guessing they were the Horde was supposed to be the big bad of the next season, which never happened. But yeah, so the Four Horsemen did do redesigns for the Horde, and Leech was quite amazing. So they didn't make action figures of the Horde, but they managed to do stactions. NECA managed to do stactions designed by the Four Horsemen. So non-articulated action figures, in case you don't know what those were. And Leech was amazing. So I think that alone, I'll show a picture here. That alone kind of like bumped him up to my favorite member of the Horde. So aside from the fact that, he was massive. Yeah, I just liked his design. So, and this version came with like some net, which was made of like some sort of soft rubber, which disintegrated, it crumbled. So I no longer have it, or maybe it's in storage in pieces, but it was just an extra thing that we don't really need. So, Leech. And the final member of the original group, the weirdest one, is this dude. I don't know how else to introduce him, but Mantenna. So, this guy, funny story. My wife is a very cool wife who does not really give me much flack about my excessive toy buying habits, and so it's a blessing and a curse because she can't really police me when I do clearly need some policing every now and then. But basically, whenever I add a new toy to the shelf, she doesn't really take notice, right? She doesn't really, I don't know. But when I put this guy in the shelf, she basically said, "What the hell is that?" This guy is, well, basically a nightmare in plastic. And okay, so in the Filmation cartoon, Mantenna was basically the runt of the group, I guess. I honestly don't know what sort of universal if that is really the theme, what universal monster this guy was supposed to cover. But he was basically a comedy relief character. He was always the one, from what I remember, he looked really puny, and he was always the butt of all the jokes. But the reality is his original figure was pretty grotesque. Look at how... this is an amped up version of the original toy. And again, if it wasn't obvious, this guy's gimmick was he had pop-out eyes, right? The original toy, I believe, had a lever here that when you tweaked up, the eyes would pop out. Obviously, this one doesn't have that. He just has replaceable parts. So even, look at that. That's even grosser, right? Ugh. But yeah, so on display, he's got his eyes popped out like they should. So the original toy, the guy has 4 legs, right? The original toy had them sculpted that way. But so when Mattel was doing the Classics line, the big question was what they were going to do with Mantenna. And well, they went all the way, and they actually gave him 4 individually articulated legs, which just add to his like overall grotesque design. And let's see his crossbow again. Is it another? No. Okay, we're still good. It's unique head sculpt, which is cool. So yeah, Mantenna. I think my eldest daughter, who at the time when I got this was maybe around 2 or 3, yeah, so she took one look at this toy on the shelf and she got freaked out. So yeah, possibly the best Classics rendition of an OG toy, in my opinion, is this guy, Mantenna, right? They pulled out all the stops and they kind of erased any memories of that goofy character from the Filmation cartoon. Again, look at this dude. Ugh. But yeah, Mantenna. Then in the toy line, the Horde train kept going because apparently they were so successful, and so we got a few more Horde toys. First, starting with this monstrosity, Modulok. He's some insectoid being. So I guess by this point, the whole Universal Monsters thing was debunked. This was kind of limiting, right? Exactly what you can do. So obviously there was no insectoid monster in the Universal Monsters. But yeah, so his gimmick was he was an insectoid dude who could actually be taken apart, right? And he was like a Modulok, so modular. So you could take him apart into pieces. And I mean, the original toy had it, and so Mattel, thankfully, I hope I don't break this. This has been in storage for so long, but so Mattel thankfully preserved this gimmick because, I mean, what's a Modulok without, that wasn't modular? I think I will not take apart anything else because I might break this thing in real time. But yeah, so what would a Modulok be that wasn't modular? So at least thankfully, Mattel preserved this feature, right? I mean, it was just really just making things detachable, you know, limbs. So basically, you could create whatever you wanted. You can make two separate characters or one, you know. And in the cartoon, I think, okay, Modulok actually made it, I believe, to the original Filmation, the He-Man cartoon. He came out in maybe at least one episode where he kidnapped Roboto and he used him, reprogrammed him to fight He-Man and stuff. So he was a scientist, a Horde scientist. So yeah, he didn't have a crossbow, but he had this very, very gummy gun, which is something that plagued a lot of the classics figures, gummy weapons and accessories. But yeah, so this is Modulok. Then we have Dragstor. So this guy was a drag car racing themed member. So the original toy, his gimmick was, so you can see he has a wheel here. This was, I mean, this is just sculpted on for this figure, but the original toy was an actual working wheel that was embedded inside his, well, his lower area. And basically you could, oh, sorry, first let's this is cool. So it's still a crossbow, but it's car engine themed, right? But anyway, so I don't think the original toy had this one. So this is a Four Horsemen thing. So, but the original toy, basically you could lay him down horizontally on the floor, and he had a pullback mechanism. You know those toy motorcycles or cars where you stick in that ridged stick, for lack of a better word. You know what I mean? I'll show a picture. You stick it in and you pull it, and it makes the wheel spin, and it makes the car go on the ground. So yeah, Dragstor had that. What's cool is the Horsemen repurposed or redesigned what was supposed to be that stick into a whip thing, which is pretty cool. So this is something that the Four Horsemen did a lot. They repurposed a lot of the original toy accessories that were part of the action figure into actual weapons for the classics version. So yeah, Dragstor. Yeah, see, look. So this is the slot. They even sculpted. They included the slot. So you stick there in the back. So you stick the you stick the stick in here, and then you pull, right? And then it would make this wheel spin, and you lay him on the ground, and he goes off. So yeah, Dragstor. And then possibly the most popular member of the Horde, thanks to a certain ambassador of the brand, modern ambassador of the brand, Mr. Pixel Dan Erdley. So we have Mosquitor. If you don't know who Pixel Dan is, he's probably the most popular Masters of the Universe YouTuber. I guess he got popular around 2008, 2009 when he started reviewing all these classics figures as they came out. He became the definitive reviewer. And so he has always said that Mosquitor was his favorite character of all time. So again, so he's an insectoid themed Horde member, a mosquito. And his gimmick, the original toy, was he had like a chamber which had, you know, this was something that was common in like 70s toys, like those X-ray, Bionic Man or whatnot, where you could see the insides, and it had veins and blood vessels, and you could pump. You had a button in the back which you would pump, and it would make the blood liquid all around the vessels move, which was cool. So they adapted that into He-Man with their Mosquitor figure. So Mosquitor figure. So again, he had that liquid blood in his chest, and you would like pump, and the blood would like swirl all around his chest. Of course, again, classics did away with all of that for articulation and sculpt, and so you got this, which is fine with me. He looks a bit too muscular for a mosquito. Oh, and these insect appendages weren't part of the original toy. So this was Mattel's attempt at throwing a bone at the fans of the redesign. So he was redesigned by the Four Horsemen as well into a more mosquito-ish looking Mosquitor, right? So again, I'll post a picture here of the staction. So as you can see, he was a lot more skinny and spiny. He had this cool blood tank contraption on the back. But if you want the classics, is the classics, right? So this is what you get with a little bonus of the appendages, which is cool. So Mosquitor. And from here, we go into the third phase of this video, which was, so again, like I said, the Horde was released towards the tail end of the cartoon, the Filmation of cartoon of He-Man, and by this time, they were focusing on She-Ra, and so they became She-Ra villains. And of course, the first one they introduced was the main rival of She-Ra in the toy line, who was Catra. I'm not a She-Ra expert, but from what I understand, like I said, she was meant to be in the toy line to be the main villain of She-Ra. He-Man had Skeletor, and so She-Ra had Catra. And she got bumped down, I guess, to second in command once Hordak was thrown into the mix, but she was again added to the Evil Horde. And first of all, this is the cartoon look. This is not how the original Catra toy looked like, so we'll have that over here. The original Catra looked more in line with the whole, He-Man, Barbie look that they were going for the original She-Ra toys. So this new look is more in line with her status as a member of the Horde, right? So she was repurposed as a member of the Horde, not her own thing, and so she's got Hordak's insignia on her chest. She's predominantly red. And so in the original cartoon, she had the power of turning into a cat. So she had this visor, which is removable. I need to put some sticky tack in here because that might just get lost. It's not the most stable. And she would just like bring it down, which this can kind of do. So she would, bring it down over her head, and that would activate her cat powers and turn her into a cat, which unfortunately we never got a version of her cat version. This was a cool toy for me to get because she was the first major She-Ra character that was released in classics, I believe. And when she was released, it basically set out a signal, at least for me, Mattel was serious with their classics line, and they were looking to cover as much as they could from whatever She-Ra and New Adventures and stuff. So this was the first action figure of this version of Catra, which is cool. And the original She-Ra figures had rooted hair because they were kind of trying to market it to girls, and they figured girls like Barbie. So they were kind of like a cross between Barbie and action figures. So they had rooted hair, and they basically came with combs. And so the Four Horsemen actually repurposed that and kept the comb as a callback to the original toy, but made it the handle to a whip, which is pretty cool. So yeah, Catra. And then possibly the most popular member of the Horde that wasn't part of the original toy line, so she was created for the cartoon, Hordak's version of Evil In. In this case, it was the witch Shadow Weaver. Oops, that's her magic book. Right, so she came with, I think she came with a wand. I must have been left in storage, but yeah. So this was a pretty controversial figure, I remember, because for those not in the know, the classics line were released as a subscription model. They weren't available on retail, they were available online, and in order to get them, you would have to commit to a subscription. You would have to pay in advance, from what I remember, for at least 12 figures, one figure a month. And you didn't know what figures would be released, at least when the subscription went on sale. So it was kind of like, they promised they would get to everyone, but at the time of committing at the beginning of the year or at the end of the previous year, you really didn't have an idea of what you were going to get the next year. But so it was kind of a leap of faith. And in order to soften that, they would include a 13th subscription figure, exclusive subscription figure. Again, is meant to entice. So getting into the subscription would guarantee you a figure a month, and whatever holdovers, whatever extras would be sold on the day of release on the site, which usually would get sold out immediately. But they would have an exclusive subscription-only figure. So you could only get this figure if you subscribe. Shadow Weaver was the exclusive figure. Usually it was some, extra character like He-Man returning a disguise or whatnot. That wasn't really essential to the collection. But Shadow Weaver, especially for Filmation and She-Ra fans, was essential. She was, like I said, she was kind of like the Evil In of Hordak. But Mattel decided to release her as an exclusive for the subscription, which made a lot of collectors cry foul. I had no problem because I was always all in on all those subscriptions every year. So I got my Shadow Weaver, no problem. And so yeah, as a figure, I mean, she's basically a cone. She's supposed to hover in the air, so she has a stand, which I will not remove because it might break. You know, I don't know how stable these plastics are. But yeah, she's not the best action figure. And of course, she had like this sweeping robe, which Mattel was still trying to figure out the best way to achieve it. And it's okay. But again, she's not a, I mean, she's a spellcaster, and you just need her spellcasting hand and whatnot. But she's essential to any serious Horde display. So yeah, Shadow Weaver. And then we have, I guess you could call her Hordak's version of Clawful, Scorpia. So she was a prominently featured member of the Horde created for the cartoon, and so this was her first official figure. And design-wise, I think she's awesome. I mean, yes, she's not a lobster, she's a scorpion, which is a much smaller arthropod. What are they called? Insectoid, whatever, you know, animal. And yeah, so she has, as a member of the Horde, she also has her signature crossbow, which is a scorpion themed crossbow, which is pretty cool. And she has her tail, which is not articulated, unfortunately. It's rubber. Oh, it is articulated, at least in the base. I think Mattel was against bendy plastic for bendy rubber for some reason. So unfortunately, she doesn't have that. But I mean, you know, the articulation's good enough. I thought she was one of the better looking characters created for the series. Although I do remember she had this really voice, which is very unfeminine, which, you know, whatever. But yeah, I really love the fact that we were now getting these currently only cartoon exclusive characters in classics. Characters made for the cartoon. Oops, there goes her headdress. In classics. So Catra, Scorpia, and Shadow Weaver. But we're not quite done yet, because aside from these ones, these weren't the only, you know, cartoon only characters made for the Horde. There are a whole lot, which we will cover in the next video. But before we end this one, we have one more major one, which is every good army needs a trooper. And Mattel, so this is the Horde trooper, and Mattel was nice enough to not just give us one, but two. So the Horde trooper came in a 2-pack with a plethora of different weapons, including their own version of the crossbow, multiple weapons. I don't know if this is all of them, but yeah, so to give you display options, right, for your troops. You could army build and stuff like that. So I believe the original toy line had these guys. They had a toy of this guy, but this was the classic take, which is pretty cool. And I did not army build, I just bought the 1-2-pack, which is good enough for me. You can use them to flank Hordak, and how's that for a display? So yeah, there are a whole lot more Horde members. Unfortunately, I think too much to cover in one video, so this will be a 2-parter. So for now, we just got let's take out these Hordes and get the original ones. So Hordak, you got Leech, you got Mantenna, and you've got Grizzlor, the original Horde. And just for the sake of keeping things equal or even, let's throw in, Mosquitor as well. All right, I would throw in Modulok, but Modulok is like broken up into pieces right now. So yeah, this is the first part of the Evil Horde, and stay tuned for the next. And thank you for watching. Until the next one, bye.